No one in the Mooncrest Palace expected the newborn heir to speak. He was only 6 months old, pale as winter light and silent as snow. Yet on the night, everything fell apart, when the housekeeper Emma knelt before the furious king. Trembling after being accused of harming the royal baby, the child lifted his tiny hand, pointed at her, and let out a sound none of them had ever heard. A desperate, broken cry that didn't accuse, but pleaded. It was the first sign that the truth was nothing like what the court believed. Emma had been working in the palace for only 3 weeks, cleaning corridors that smelled of cold stone and old power. She avoided eye contact, moved quietly, and never asked questions, especially not about the heir. Baby Elias was the king's miracle child, born after decades of failed attempts and political pressure. So when Emma found him crying alone in his chamber, with bruises blooming on his tiny arms, she froze. She touched nothing. She ran to call the guards. But by the time she returned, the court had already chosen their culprit, her. The king arrived moments later, his presence heavy enough to silence the room. Tall, elegant, with centuries of authority carved into every gesture, King Alaric looked at Emma with eyes full of thunder. "You were alone with him," he said, "and now my son is hurt." Emma felt her heart pound so loudly she could barely hear. She tried to speak, but fear strangled her voice. The courtiers whispered, eager for her downfall. "No human should ever be so close to the heir," they murmured. "No human should be trusted in the nursery." But before we continue, I want to invite you to something very special. Subscribe to the channel and leave your like. This helps me see that you support me and enjoy my stories. And comment below which city you're watching from. Now, let's continue. Emma forced herself to breathe. Her hands shook as she clasped them together. "Your Majesty," she managed, "I didn't touch him. I found him like this. Someone else must have come in before me." She lifted her chin slightly, even though every instinct told her to bow. "Please, I would never harm a child." The court erupted in laughter. "Humans always lie," one advisor muttered. Another added, "She was desperate for attention, perhaps trying to steal the child's trust." Emma stood alone in a sea of disdain, her throat burning with injustice. She had grown up far from kingdoms and castles, in a fishing village where honesty mattered more than bloodlines. Here, honesty was a fragile thing, easily crushed by power. Then Elias whimpered, a soft sound that cut through the noise. The king turned immediately, his expression shifting from fury to worry. He approached the cradle, brushing a finger along the bruises that marked the child's skin. Shadowy marks, too clear to ignore, too precise to be an accident. "Who did this to you?" Alaric whispered. The answer came like a spark in the dark. Elias reached for Emma. Not for his father, not for the nursemaid standing closest. For Emma. His tiny hand stretched toward her with trembling insistence. His eyes, silver like moonlit water, locked onto hers as if begging her not to disappear. And then it happened. A sound, thin, breathy, but unmistakably intentional, escaped his lips. "No!" Gasps filled the chamber. Emma froze, her chest tightening with bewilderment. The child wasn't accusing her. He was refusing the accusation itself. King Alaric turned sharply toward the court. "He speaks," someone whispered. "At 6 months? Impossible." But the king wasn't looking at them. He was staring at Emma as if seeing her for the first time. "Why would he reach for you?" he asked. "I don't know," Emma answered, voice barely steady. "But I swear, I only want to protect him." The king's gaze flicked to his son again, then back to her. Doubt cracked through his certainty like a fissure. "If you didn't harm him," he murmured, "then someone inside this room did." A tense silence fell. Emma felt every eye shift away. Guilty eyes, fearful eyes, calculating eyes. She realized then that Elias wasn't the only one in danger. Whatever had happened tonight, she had stumbled into something far bigger than herself. And someone in that chamber wanted her gone before she uncovered the truth. The king ordered everyone except Emma and the royal physician to leave the nursery. The sudden command cracked through the air like a whip, and courtiers rushed out, their faces pale with fear or irritation. Emma stayed still, pulse thundering in her ears, unsure whether she had just been spared or cornered. Elias, still reaching for her, whimpered again, his small fingers trembling as if the effort of speaking had drained him. King Alaric studied her in silence. His presence was overwhelming, not just because he was a vampire, but because he radiated a kind of restrained grief, the weight of years spent longing for a child who wouldn't survive past infancy. Elias was his miracle, his weakness, and now, his potential undoing. Alaric's gaze lingered on the bruises marking the baby's skin, each one dark as ink on parchment. They were deliberate, circular, arranged in a pattern no accident could create. The physician, a thin, quiet man named Dr. Marin, leaned over the cradle, examining the marks with trembling fingers. "Your Majesty, these wounds were not caused by human hands," he said softly. Emma's breath caught. She looked from the doctor to the king, waiting for their reaction. The shape, the pressure, it matches vampire strength. Someone of our kind did this. Alaric's jaw tightened. The air grew colder. He turned his head slightly, voice low and controlled. "You are certain, completely certain," Dr. Marin whispered. "A human could never bruise him this way." Emma's knees nearly gave out. She hadn't realized how deeply she needed someone, anyone, to believe her. The king's eyes flicked to her, no longer filled with the same rage as before. Now there was something else there, something unnerving, curiosity, suspicion, a question he didn't yet know how to ask aloud. She stepped closer to the cradle, feeling Elias's gaze cling to her like a lifeline. "Your Majesty," she said gently, "may I pick him up?" She wasn't sure why she asked. Perhaps because the child seemed terrified. Perhaps because she was. Alaric hesitated, then gave a small nod. Emma lifted Elias into her arms, feeling his cool little body melt against her warmth. His breath was soft against her collarbone, his fingers clutching her dress as if she were the only safe thing he knew. She felt something tighten in her chest, an instinct she hadn't expected, fierce and protective. Alaric watched her closely. "He trusts you," he murmured. Not quite a compliment, not quite an accusation. "He has never reached for anyone that way." "I don't know why," Emma whispered, "but I would never let anything harm him." Before she could speak further, a faint sound echoed from the corridor. Quick steps, then a muffled whisper. Someone was lingering just outside the nursery door. Emma's skin prickled. Alaric heard it too. His head snapped toward the sound, his eyes glowing faintly with danger. He crossed the room with supernatural speed and flung open the door. The nursemaid stood there, trembling. Lissa, the one responsible for tending to the heir, the one who should have been with him at all times. Her blonde hair was disheveled, her lips pressed in a thin line. She bowed immediately. "My king, I came to check if you needed—" "Where were you when my son was injured?" Alaric demanded. She flinched, eyes flickering toward Emma, full of something sharp. Fear? Guilt? Or hatred? Emma couldn't tell. Lissa took a breath, steadying herself. "I was preparing his bath." Emma said she would watch him for a moment. Emma felt her stomach drop. "That's a lie," she said quietly. "I found him alone." Crying. Alaric's gaze snapped between them. Elias whimpered again, tightening his grip on Emma's dress. Lissa's eyes hardened. "She's trying to protect herself. She resents us. She hates being treated like a servant." Emma shook her head. "The truth doesn't need defending with anger." Alaric stepped closer to Lissa. "Show me your hands." Her eyes widened. My hands?" "Now." Slowly, trembling, she lifted them. At first glance they seemed normal. But then Alaric lifted her sleeves, and there, half hidden beneath her skin, were faint smudges of bruised flesh, as though someone had grabbed her wrists recently, or as though she had grabbed something too tightly. Lissa jerked her arms away, panic flashing across her face. "That means nothing," but her voice broke, and Emma, holding Elias tightly, realized that the truth was starting to surface, and that whatever Lissa was hiding, it wasn't just a mistake, it was a threat. One that wasn't meant for the baby alone. King Alaric did not raise his voice, but the silence that followed his command was sharper than any shout. "Lissa," he said, stepping closer, "look at me." She kept her eyes lowered, shoulders trembling, but he waited with the patience of a predator. Slowly, reluctantly, she lifted her gaze, her pupils dilated with fear. or guilt, or both. Emma held Elias a little tighter, the baby's cool fingers pressed against her neck, as if he sensed the tension thickening the room. Dr. Marin stood quietly at the edge of the nursery, his hands clasped behind his back, as though afraid any movement would break the fragile balance. "You were the last person with him," Alaric said. "You admit that?" Lissa swallowed. "Yes, but—" "You left the room," he continued. "Something no servant should ever do. Something no nursemaid entrusted with the heir should even consider." "Why?" Her breath hitched. "I heard something. A noise. I thought someone was calling me from the corridor." Emma frowned. "No one was there when I came in." Lissa's head whipped toward her, eyes burning. "You weren't here before. You don't know what you heard or didn't hear." "That's enough," Alaric said, silencing both with a single glance. He turned back to Lissa. "What noise?" She hesitated too long. "A whisper," she finally murmured. "A man's voice. I thought it was one of the guards." Alaric's expression didn't move, but something in his eyes sharpened. Emma saw it. A flicker of old memory, of suspicion. "You should have called for help before leaving the child." Lissa's composure cracked. Tears welled up in her eyes. "I made a mistake," she whispered, "but I would never hurt him. He is precious to all of us." Elias whimpered at the sound of her voice and buried his face against Emma's shoulder. The reaction was instinctive, almost fearful. Lissa saw it and flinched as if struck. Alaric noticed. He stepped back, folding his arms behind him. "Dr. Marin," he said, "examine her." The physician blinked. "Examine, Your Majesty, on what grounds?" "Bruises don't appear by magic," Alaric said. "If someone grabbed her, I want to know who. If she grabbed someone, I want to know that too." Lissa shook her head rapidly. "No, please. Enough." His voice dropped into a tone that left no room for argument. Dr. Marin approached her gently. "Hold out your arms," he said, his tone kind despite the tension. Lissa resisted, but Alaric took a single step forward and she stiffened in fear, extending her trembling hands. Marin studied her wrists, his fingers lightly touching the skin. "These marks, they're recent, within the hour." He looked at the king. Someone held her tightly, but not long enough to restrain her. More like a violent warning. Emma felt a chill crawl down her spine. "A warning from whom?" she asked softly. At that question, Lissa finally broke. Her knees buckled, and she fell to the floor, covering her face with her hands. "I can't say," she sobbed. "If I do, he'll kill me." Emma exchanged a glance with Alaric. "Who?" she pressed, stepping forward despite herself. Lissa shook her head violently. I can't. "Did he hurt the heir?" Alaric asked. Lissa froze. Her breath hitched, and her silence said everything. Emma felt Elias stir in her arms, sensing the fear in the room. His small hand gripped her collar, grounding her. She glanced at him and whispered, "You're safe." The words were a promise she wasn't sure she could keep. Alaric knelt in front of Lissa. The King of Mooncrest rarely knelt for anything, but he knelt now. His voice softened, though it still carried that dangerous edge. "You will tell me who laid hands on my son. If not for me, then for him." He pointed at Elias. Lissa looked at the baby, at the bruises, at the fragile innocence. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "It wasn't me," she whispered, "but he told me to say nothing. He said humans were easy scapegoats, that no one would question it." Emma felt her stomach twist. "Who?" Alaric repeated. Lissa opened her mouth, then snapped it shut again, shaking her head in terrified refusal. And then the torchlight in the room flickered. A shadow passed over the nursery window, dark and swift, almost like a silhouette leaning in. Emma's breath stuck in her throat. Lissa screamed and scrambled backward. "He's here!" she cried. "He followed me! He's watching!" The shadow lingered for a moment longer, then vanished. Alaric rose slowly, eyes glowing with cold fury. "Emma," he said quietly, "take Elias and stay behind me." And Emma understood, with terrifying clarity, that whoever hurt the child was bold enough to return, and powerful enough to hide in plain sight. Emma stepped back, shielding Elias with her body as King Alaric moved toward the window. The room felt smaller now, the shadows thicker. as though something unseen breathed with them. The torches along the walls flickered again, each flame bending in the same direction, as if pulled by an invisible current. Emma's grip tightened on the baby, whose silver eyes watched everything with eerie alertness. Lissa crawled across the floor, struggling to breathe, tears streaking down her face. "He told me he'd come," she whispered. "He said if I tried to speak, he'd make the king believe I'd lost my mind." Her voice cracked. "He watches every corner of this palace, even when you think you're alone." Alaric didn't look back. His gaze scanned the gardens below the window, the stone paths dim under the moonlight, searching for movement. "Who is he?" he asked, voice low. "Who dares threaten my son?" Lissa squeezed her eyes shut, shaking her head. "I can't. He's one of us, Your Majesty. A vampire. And he's close. Too close." Emma shivered. She had been in the palace long enough to learn that vampire politics were a delicate, dangerous web. One wrong word could destroy alliances centuries old. One betrayal could ignite a war. If a vampire had harmed the heir, it wasn't just cruelty. It was a political act. Alaric stepped away from the window and turned toward Lissa. "Tell me his name." But before she could answer, Elias let out a soft, strangled cry. Not a normal cry, something deeper, instinctive, almost frightened. Emma looked down and saw his tiny hand pointing again, this time not at a person, but at the heavy door leading out to the west corridor. Alaric's eyes narrowed. Something is out there. Emma felt her skin crawl. She didn't hear anything, didn't see anything. But Elias trembled in her arms and she trusted his terror more than her senses. He was only a baby, but he was the heir of an ancient line. His instincts were sharper than any human's. Dr. Marin stepped forward, voice shaky. "Your Majesty, if someone is moving through the west wing, the guards would have sounded an alarm." "That corridor is warded," Alaric said. "No alarm can sound there without my command. It was designed to protect the heir's chambers from external threats." Emma's breath caught. But what if the threat is internal? Silence fell. Lissa sobbed harder. "He found a way. I don't know how, but he said the wards don't matter anymore. He said he had permission." Alaric's expression turned to stone. "Permission from whom?" "I don't know," Lissa whispered. "I swear I don't." Elias whimpered again, burying his face against Emma's chest. She could feel his fear like a pulse against her skin. Instinct pushed her to act. "Your Majesty," she said softly, "we can't stay here. Whoever did this is close, and Elias feels it. We should move." Alaric hesitated, torn between fury and strategy. He looked at Emma, then at his son. Finally, he nodded. "We go to the inner chambers. They are protected by old magic, older than anyone lurking in corridors." Emma could tell he was speaking more to reassure himself than her. He lifted Lissa to her feet, though his patience with her was fading. "You will come with us," he said. "If you're telling the truth, you are not safe alone." Lissa nodded weakly, clutching her arms. Alaric opened the nursery door slowly. The west corridor stretched before them, long and dimly lit, its stone walls cold and silent. Emma swallowed hard. There was nothing visibly wrong with it. No intruder, no shadow, no sign of danger. Yet Elias pressed his face harder into her neck, trembling uncontrollably. They moved quickly but quietly, Alaric leading the way with supernatural alertness. Emma followed close behind, each step echoing louder than the last. Lissa trailed them, glancing over her shoulder again and again, as if expecting someone to appear from the darkness. Halfway down the corridor, the torches on the right wall extinguished all at once. Emma gasped. Lissa screamed. Alaric spun around, eyes glowing bright silver, ready to strike. But the corridor remained empty. No footsteps, no movement, only cold air sweeping past them like a warning. "Keep moving," Alaric said, voice now edged with fury he could no longer hide. Emma held Elias tighter. She could feel his heartbeat racing. And for the first time since she had entered the palace weeks ago, she wondered if she was not only protecting him, but also being protected by him, because something in the dark was following them, something bold enough to attack the heir of the vampire kingdom. And Emma realized with a shiver that the truth was no longer simply hidden. It was hunting them. The corridor swallowed their footsteps as they moved deeper into the palace's protected wing. Emma kept Elias pressed against her chest, feeling every shiver running through his small body. His wide silver eyes stared over her shoulder, fixated on the darkness behind them. It felt as if something unseen walked just out of sight, pacing them, breathing down their necks. King Alaric pushed open the door to the inner chambers, and the moment they crossed the threshold, the air shifted. Warmth replaced the chill. The torches inside lit themselves with a soft blue flame, ancient vampire magic that ignited only in the presence of the royal bloodline. Emma exhaled shakily, tension unwinding just a fraction. Elias, too, loosened his grip, resting his tiny cheek against her collarbone. They were safe here, at least for a moment. Alaric sealed the door with a press of his palm, locking them inside a circular room of stone walls and silver-etched runes. It felt like stepping into a heart that had stopped beating centuries ago. "No one enters unless I allow it," he said. "These walls were built before this palace even existed." Lissa clung to the edge of the room, trembling. "He's not going to stop, Your Majesty," she whispered. "He said he'd come back tonight. He said the child wasn't meant to live." Emma felt her stomach drop. "Why? Why hurt a baby?" Lissa shook her head helplessly. "He thinks Elias is a threat, that he'll grow up with powers no heir should have." Alaric stiffened. "Powers?" Lissa hesitated, then nodded slowly. "He said the child carries a dormant gift, something rare, something dangerous." Before Alaric could respond, Elias stirred. He lifted his head, eyes drifting toward the sealed door. His little brows furrowed. Then he made a soft sound, almost like a warning. Emma felt his fear vibrating through her ribs. "But before we continue, tell me in the comments what you think of this story so far and what you would do in her place. Don't leave the video, because what comes next will give you chills." A deep boom echoed through the hall outside. Emma jumped. Alaric stepped between them and the door, his voice turning sharp. "No one should be able to reach this room." Dr. Marin approached cautiously. "Your Majesty, what if he has found a way to break the wards?" Another boom, louder, closer, followed by a scraping sound, metal against stone, as though someone were dragging claws along the walls. Lissa covered her mouth to stifle a cry. "That's him," she whispered. "He's trying to get in." Alaric's eyes burned silver. "Let him try." But Emma wasn't reassured. The runes along the walls flickered faintly, glowing and dimming like a failing heartbeat. Elias whimpered again, burying his face in her chest. She tightened her arms around him instinctively. The infant wasn't just frightened. He was sensing something the rest of them couldn't yet see. A soft whisper drifted through the chamber, so quiet, Emma almost thought she imagined it. "Emma." Her breath caught. It wasn't Lissa, or Marin, or Alaric. The voice came from the door. Alaric spun around, fangs bared. "Who calls her name?" Silence followed. Then the whisper came again, this time lower, colder, dragging over the stone like a breath of frost. "Give me the child." Lissa sank to her knees. Dr. Marin backed away from the door. Emma's pulse pounded in her ears as she pressed Elias tighter against her chest. "Stay behind me," Alaric ordered, his voice a deep growl. "No one touches him." But something shifted in the air, like a pulse of pressure rolling through the chamber. The runes dimmed again, flickering out for a heartbeat. The door rattled violently. A crack formed across its surface, splintering under an unseen force. Emma gasped. "The wards! They're failing!" "No!" Alaric snarled. "They cannot fail!" The crack widened, spreading like lightning across the ancient metal. A cold wind poured through the seams, carrying with it the scent of old forests and decayed leaves, unnatural, wild, and ancient. Elias lifted his head, staring at the door, his tiny chest rising and falling faster and faster. Then his small hand reached out, not toward Emma, but toward Alaric. The king froze. It was the same gesture Elias had made in the nursery. A warning, a plea. "He senses him," Emma whispered. "He knows what's coming." Alaric stepped back, closer to her and Elias. For the first time that night, Emma saw something she had never imagined she'd see in a vampire king. Fear. The crack in the door widened once more, and then suddenly, everything went silent, too silent, as if the palace itself were holding its breath, as if something on the other side were deciding whether to break through or wait. Emma stood there, heartbeat thundering, knowing that the next moment would change everything, because whoever had harmed the heir was no longer hiding. The silence tightening around the chamber was so complete that Emma could hear her own heartbeat echoing in her ears. Elias clung to her with tiny fingers curled into her shirt, trembling with a fear that didn't belong to a child his age. King Alaric stood motionless beside them, every muscle in his body coiled, his silver eyes locked on the cracking door. The silence broke with a faint, chilling sound, slow tapping, like fingertips brushing along the metal surface. Tap, tap, tap. The sound slid under Emma's skin, raising every hair on her arms. Lissa whimpered and backed into a corner. Dr. Marin pressed a hand over his mouth, his breath shaking. Alaric didn't flinch, but the shadows around him seemed to vibrate with barely contained rage. Then the tapping stopped. A voice slipped through the crack in the door, soft as smoke. "You can't protect him, Alaric." Emma felt her stomach twist. Whoever spoke knew the king, knew him well enough to taunt him with familiarity. Alaric's jaw tightened. "Show yourself," he commanded. "If you think you can challenge me in my own palace, step inside." A faint chuckle drifted through. "Oh, I will. But not yet. I want you to hear something first." Before Alaric could respond, the torches in the room flickered, their blue light wavering like frightened flames. The runes etched into the walls pulsed dimly, glowing and then dimming again, until some nearly went dark. Emma's breath caught. The wards were failing, faster than before. Elias whimpered again, lifting his face from her chest. His gaze fixed on the door, but this time his expression shifted. Not just fear, recognition. As if he knew the presence beyond the crack. A quiet moan escaped his tiny lips, one that made Emma's heart twist painfully. The voice outside the door softened. "There it is. He remembers me." Alaric's eyes widened for the briefest moment. Impossible. Emma blinked. "Remembers? He's a baby. How could he remember anyone?" "He's not just any baby," the voice answered. "Not with the gifts he carries. Not with the blood you gave him." Alaric growled, a deep, dangerous sound. "You know nothing of his blood." "Oh, I know more than you think," the voice whispered. "I know what he will become, and I know he cannot be allowed to live." Emma felt her knees weaken. She pulled Elias tighter, whispering shakily, "I've got you. I've got you." But she wasn't sure she could protect him from something that could break ancient magic with nothing but a whisper. Alaric moved in front of Emma, shielding her and the child with his body. His presence was a wall of strength, cold and steady, despite the threats surrounding them. "If you want him," he said, "then face me." Another low chuckle. "Soon. But first, a truth for your little human." Emma stiffened. "Me?" "Yes, Emma," the voice murmured, her name curling into the room like frost. "Didn't you ever wonder why he reaches for you? Why the heir of Mooncrest, royal blood, ancient blood, would cling to a human stranger?" Emma swallowed hard. She had wondered. But she thought it was just instinct, fear, or maybe some fragile bond forming in the chaos. The voice continued. "He knows you. He knew your scent the moment you walked into the nursery." "No," she whispered. "That's not possible." But the voice only laughed softly. "Hold him close, little human. Look at his eyes." Emma looked down. Elias stared up at her, his silver eyes bright and shimmering. Eyes that mirrored the king's, eyes that held a strange, fragile wisdom. He reached one tiny hand toward her cheek, and suddenly something sparked in her mind, an image that wasn't hers. A crib, cold stone, a hand brushing her hair when she was a child. A voice humming a lullaby she hadn't heard since infancy. She gasped, stumbling back. What was that?" Alaric turned toward her sharply. "Emma?" But she couldn't speak. The memory flashed again, too real, too vivid. Someone had held her like this before. Someone with the same silver eyes. Not Elias, not Alaric. Someone else. Someone ancient. The voice outside the door whispered, "You were never a stranger to him." Alaric's expression darkened. "Enough of your lies." Lies? The voice said. Ask her why she feels the urge to protect him. Ask her why she hears echoes that don't belong to her life. Ask her why she dreams of halls she has never walked. Emma's breath hitched. How did he know about the dreams? Alaric stepped closer to her. Emma, what dreams? She backed away, shaking her head. I don't know. I don't know what's happening. But the truth pressed at her throat like a rising tide. The voice whispered one final sentence before fading into silence. She's tied to him, Alaric, and to you, more than you dare to remember. Then the corridor fell silent again. But Emma understood one thing with terrifying clarity. The enemy didn't just want the heir. He wanted her connection to him, a connection she had never asked for, and had no idea how deep it went. Emma pressed her back against the cold stone wall, breathing hard, her mind spinning with the fragments of a memory that didn't belong to her. Elias whimpered softly in her arms, his tiny fingers clinging to her collar like he feared she might disappear. King Alaric watched her closely, his sharp silver eyes no longer filled with suspicion, but with something deeper, concern, and perhaps a fear of an answer he didn't want to hear. The crack in the door stopped spreading. The torches steadied. Yet the air in the chamber felt heavier, as though the presence outside still lingered, listening. Emma swallowed, forcing down the tremor in her voice. I don't understand, she whispered. I don't know why he said those things. Alaric stepped toward her slowly, careful not to startle her. Emma, tell me exactly what you saw. What did you feel? She shook her head. It was nothing. Just flashes. Of what? Emma closed her eyes. The moment she did, the images surfaced, clearer, sharper, as if someone had opened a door inside her mind. A cradle made of dark wood, silver eyes watching over her. A lullaby, soft and ancient, a hand brushing her hair. But that hand was cold. She opened her eyes in a panic. I don't want to remember, she whispered, because none of it makes sense. Emma, Alaric's voice softened, rare and careful. If you saw something connected to him, he nodded toward Elias, then it matters. But before Emma could answer, the torches flickered again, and Elias made a small, frightened sound. His eyes darted toward the door, then up toward Emma's face. He reached out with both hands, not toward the threat outside, but toward her, like he wanted her to understand something he couldn't say. Emma felt the truth pressing at the edges of her mind, begging to be seen. Before we continue, tell me if you would have the courage to live a story like this, or if something similar has ever happened to you. Don't leave the video, because what comes next will give you chills. A sudden, sharp knock echoed through the corridor outside. This time it wasn't a scratch or a whisper. It was a command, a warning. Alaric stepped between them and the door instantly, fangs bared in silent fury. Enough hiding, he growled. Face me. But no answer came. Only the lonely hum of the runes vibrating along the walls. Lissa crawled closer to Emma, her voice trembling. Miss, you said you don't want to remember. Does that mean you do remember something? Emma swallowed. I don't know what's real and what isn't. Dr. Marin cleared his throat nervously. Your Majesty, if she is having visions or memories that aren't hers, this could be the heir's doing. Emma stiffened. His doing. Marin nodded. Vampire infants with emerging psychic abilities can project sensations, fears, even fragments of memories, especially towards someone they trust. Emma looked down at Elias. He stared back up at her, eyes shimmering with a pleading softness that twisted her heart. Are you trying to tell me something? She whispered. Elias lifted one small hand, this time touching her cheek, not pointing at danger. His cool palm held a strange warmth beneath it, as if two energies pulsed together. And then, another vision. A woman with dark hair holding a newborn in a moonlit chamber. A whisper. Protect him, even if I cannot. A hand, her hand, taking the baby from the woman's arms. A pair of glowing silver eyes, watching, trusting. Emma jerked back, nearly dropping to her knees. The room spun, the vision vanishing as quickly as it came. Elias let out a soft cry, as if the break in their connection frightened him. Alaric seized her shoulders gently, steadying her. Emma, what did you see? She opened her mouth, But speaking felt impossible. Terror and confusion tangled inside her like vines. "I saw a baby," she whispered. "Not Elias, someone else, and a woman. She told me to protect him." Alaric's grip tightened. "What woman?" "I don't know," Emma said, voice cracking. "But she had your eyes." The room fell silent. Even the torches seemed to hold their breath. Alaric stepped back, shock flickering across his features, a rare and dangerous sight. "Describe her." Emma hesitated. She looked like she belonged to the old families, like she was royalty. Lissa made a choking sound. "That can't be. The Queen died long before Emma was even born." Emma's blood ran cold. "The Queen!" But Alaric didn't answer. His gaze turned toward the door again, fury rising like smoke. "He's not after my son," he said, voice low and deadly. "He's after the truth." Emma's pulse raced. "About Elias? About the Queen? About me?" Alaric met her gaze, silver fire burning in his eyes. "No," he said softly. "About why you were brought into this palace at all." Another crack echoed through the hall. The enemy was back. And this time, he sounded impatient. The crack in the hall thundered again, sharper this time, as if someone struck the ancient metal with enough force to fracture centuries of magic. Emma's heart lurched. Elias whimpered and pressed his face against her neck, his tiny body shivering with a fear that felt too aware, too knowing for a child. King Alaric moved toward the door, each step steady and controlled, though Emma could feel the fury radiating from him in silent waves. Lissa clutched her arms, shrinking against the wall. "He's getting in. He's getting in," she whispered, rocking slightly. "Doctor." Marin hovered near her, eyes darting from Emma to Alaric to the door, as though calculating the safest place to stand, if such a place existed. Emma held Elias tighter. The room vibrated faintly, runes flickering like candlelight caught in a storm. "Your Majesty," she whispered, voice tight. "If the wards fail." "They won't," he said. But the crease tightening around his eyes told her he wasn't certain. The door shuddered again. Emma felt the vibration move through the floor, a thrum like the heartbeat of something enormous waking beneath them. She swallowed. "If he gets through, what does he want with me?" Alaric didn't answer immediately. He kept his gaze fixed on the door as if he could force it to hold. "Emma," he said quietly, "listen to me. You must not let him near Elias, no matter what happens, no matter what he says." "But why me?" she whispered. "Why does Elias know me?" Another boom. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Alaric turned to her then, truly turned, and for the first time, Emma saw something in him she had never expected. Guilt. "Because years ago," he said slowly, "someone brought a human child into the palace, a little girl with dark hair and frightened eyes. She had wandered too near the borders, alone. The Queen found her." Emma's breath caught. Her voice came out barely audible. "Me?" Alaric nodded once. "The Queen refused to harm you. Instead, she shielded you, hid you. She believed you were meant to be protected. She claimed you had a thread of destiny binding you to the royal bloodline." Emma felt dizzy. "But I don't remember any of that." "You were too young," he said. "And after the Queen died, you were taken from the palace for your own safety. Your memories, your connection, were meant to fade." "But why would she protect me?" Emma whispered. "I was just a child." Before Alaric could answer, Elias lifted his small head from her shoulder. His bright silver eyes met hers with an intensity so deep it made her chest tighten. Another flicker of memory surged through her. The Queen's voice, the same silver eyes, a touch on her hair, a whisper. "One day you will keep him safe." Emma staggered, gripping the wall with her free hand. She knew. She knew you'd have a child. Alaric exhaled slowly, the truth settling between them like dust. The Queen had gifts, not powers we understand, but visions. She insisted the child of Mooncrest would only survive if protected by someone born outside the night, a human, someone pure of intention, someone who would love the child instinctively. Emma stared at Elias, who blinked up at her with trembling trust. "And she meant me," she whispered. Alaric nodded once. Yes. Emma felt the floor tilt. Everything inside her, every fear, every question, shifted into place with a clarity that made her tremble. But before she could speak, the door cracked again, this time with a sound like splintering bone. A voice seeped through the widening fissure. "You should have told her sooner, Alaric." Alaric stiffened. "Show yourself, coward." The voice chuckled. "Do you think I fear you? You who let your queen die? You who hid the truth from the very human who could have saved her?" Emma froze. "Saved her?" Alaric snarled. "You know nothing." "I know everything," the voice said, softer now. "Including the truth about that child you hold so dearly. He is not simply your heir." Emma's stomach twisted. "What? What does he mean?" The voice continued, dripping with poison. "He carries the queen's gift. Her power did not vanish when she died. She passed it on, and Alaric fears it. Fears what the child will become. Fears that you, Emma, are the key she left behind." Another boom shook the chamber. Emma flinched. Alaric moved closer to her and Elias, positioning himself between them and the door. The voice whispered, "Let me in, Emma." She stiffened. "Give me the child," it purred, "and I will tell you everything the king has kept from you." "No," Alaric growled. Emma shook, torn between terror and the crushing weight of revelations she didn't yet understand. Elias began to cry, soft, frightened, urgent, and Emma realized with a cold, sinking certainty, the enemy didn't come only for the heir. He came for the forgotten truth she carried inside her, a truth ready to break open. The door groaned under one final violent strike, the metal bending inward as if the shadows themselves were trying to claw through. Emma staggered back, clutching Elias with both arms. His silver eyes were wide, glowing faintly, reflecting a fear too old and too aware for an infant. Alaric stepped in front of them, his entire body braced, every muscle carved with tension. "Stay behind me," he ordered. Emma nodded, though her legs trembled beneath her. On the floor, Lissa whimpered and pressed her forehead to the stone. Dr. Marin pulled her closer, but his gaze kept flickering to the door as though expecting death to slip through the crack at any second. A thin whisper slid through the fractured metal. "Emma, don't be afraid. I'm here for the truth." Emma squeezed her eyes shut. "Stop saying my name." Her voice shook. "I don't know you, but you do." The voice purred. "Your soul remembers even if your mind does not. You were there the night the queen died." Emma's entire body went cold. She couldn't speak. Alaric growled. "You twist her memories with lies. She was a child. She saw nothing." The voice laughed. "You're afraid of what she'll remember. But I'm not." The torches flickered wildly, blue flames casting frantic shadows across the chamber walls. One rune on the far wall sputtered, dimmed, and then went dark. Emma gasped. "The wards! They're falling!" Lissa cried. "He's breaking through!" Alaric didn't turn. His focus was solely on the door. "You will not touch them," he spat, his voice low and lethal. "Oh, Alaric," the intruder whispered. "You still think you are the one I want to hurt?" Emma swallowed hard. "What do you want? To finish what began the night you were brought into this palace," the voice replied, "and to claim what the queen tried to hide." Emma's heartbeat roared in her ears. "What did she hide?" "Her replacement," the voice said. "Her chosen shield. You." Emma shook her head violently. "No, I'm just a housekeeper. I don't have powers. I'm not—" "You are human," he interrupted. "And that is exactly why she chose you. Because the queen foresaw that her son would be born with power no vampire court could control. Power that needed a human tether." Emma's breath faltered. "A tether," she whispered. "To him?" Elias whimpered, reaching his small hand toward her cheek again, as if urging her to understand. Another violent boom cracked through the chamber, a large piece of metal bending inward. Emma cried out, stumbling back. The runes flickered frantically, 3 more going dark in rapid succession. "Alaric!" Dr. Marin yelled. "There's nothing holding him out anymore." Alaric raised one hand, silencing him. But Emma saw the fear under the king's fury. He knew this was no ordinary enemy. This was someone who had walked these halls before. someone who knew how to break ancient magic, someone who wanted more than blood. He wanted vengeance. Emma's voice broke. Why me? Why is he after me? The voice answered, almost tenderly. Because you were the last person the queen trusted. You were the one she entrusted with her final secret, before Alaric took you away and wiped your memories. Emma stared at the king, horror tightening her chest. Is that true? Alaric didn't move. His silence was answer enough. A sob escaped her. You wiped my memories? Alaric turned slowly, regret flickering across his face. Emma, you were a child. You were in danger. I did what I had to do to protect you. Another piece of metal creaked free from the doorframe, clattering onto the floor. The voice whispered, and what a beautiful mistake that was. Emma trembled. What? What did the queen tell me? The intruder's answer slid through the crack like poison. That her son would be born with her gift, and that only you would be able to calm him, guide him, keep him alive, even from Alaric. Emma shook her head. No, that can't be. I'm nobody. You are the queen's choice, he said, and I will tear that infant from your arms if it's the only way to break her prophecy. Elias let out a cry, loud, sharp, almost human and almost not. The final rune on the door flickered once, twice, then died. The metal groaned as the door began to open. Alaric stepped forward, raising his hand, energy crackling like silver fire around his fingers. Stay back, Emma, he said, no matter what happens. But Emma couldn't move, her legs rooted to the floor, Elias clutching her like the only safe place left in the world. She finally whispered, voice breaking, Who are you? The door opened just a sliver, and the voice answered, The queen's brother. The chamber collapsed into silence. The door burst inward with a deafening clang, shards of ancient metal scattering across the stone floor. Emma staggered back, shielding Elias as the torches flared so brightly they momentarily blinded her. A cold wind swept through the chamber, carrying a scent like frozen earth and old grief. When Emma's vision cleared, a tall figure stepped through the broken doorway. He was pale, even for a vampire, with long black hair that curled at the ends like smoke. His eyes, silver and sharp, were hauntingly familiar, echoes of Elias, echoes of the queen. His posture was regal, predatory, confident. He wasn't just a threat, he was family. Alaric stepped forward to block his path, fangs visible, shadows swirling around him like living armor. Ravian, he growled. You swore never to return. Ravian smiled, slow and cold. And you swore to protect my sister. We both failed. Emma felt Elias trembling, his small hands clutching her blouse with a desperation she had never felt from any child. He knew this man, or feared him deeply. Ravian's gaze slid past the king and landed directly on Emma. The weight of it pinned her in place. There you are, he murmured. The chosen human, the queen's final mistake. Emma swallowed, breath shaking. I don't know what you want from me. You have something that belongs to my family, Ravian said, stepping forward. The child. And the truth. Alaric moved to strike, but Ravian lifted a single hand, and Alaric was thrown backward with a force so violent the stone cracked beneath him. Emma gasped, watching the king stagger to his feet, shock in his eyes. Ravian hadn't touched him. He had used power, old, forbidden power. Emma clutched Elias tighter as Ravian approached. You wiped her memories, he said to Alaric without turning. You hid her. You let the prophecy rot in darkness, hoping it would die with her childhood. Alaric's voice was a snarl. I did it to protect her. You did it to protect yourself, Ravian snapped. You feared the queen's visions. You feared her prophecy. And now your son pays the price. Emma shook her head, fear and confusion twisting together. What prophecy? What did she see? Ravian looked at her with unsettling gentleness. That her son would be born with her gift. The ability to bind or break the ancient bloodlines. Power so wild, it could either save our kingdom or destroy it. But he could not control it alone. Elias whimpered, hiding his face in Emma's neck. Ravian stepped closer. The queen foresaw that her child would only survive if tethered to someone born entirely outside the night. A human with a rare instinct for connection and an unshakable heart. His gaze sharpened. She foresaw you. Emma felt her knees weaken. I can't be that. I'm not— You are, Ravian interrupted. She gave you to Alaric for safekeeping. Told him to protect you until the child was born. Emma looked at Alaric, betrayal swimming through her. You knew this? Alaric's voice softened, a dangerous contrast to the chaos around them. Emma, I tried to protect you from a life you did not choose. I wanted you to live freely. Ravian scoffed. And yet you brought her back here. Fate always finds its thread. He extended a hand toward her. Give me the boy. The prophecy can be undone if he dies before his gift awakens. Emma's world froze. The room disappeared. The torches, the stone, the shadows. Everything blurred except Ravian's outstretched hand and Elias trembling in her arms. No, Emma whispered, stepping back. I won't let you touch him. Ravian's expression darkened. You would challenge me? A human? Do you truly think you matter? Then the room shifted, because Elias lifted his head, and his tiny hand reached out, not toward Ravian, but toward Emma's heart. A pulse of warmth spread from his fingers through her chest, bright and burning, like sunlight breaking through a storm. Emma gasped as her vision burst open with memories that were hers and not hers. Memories of the queen, of being held, of a lullaby meant for both her and the child she would one day protect. A voice whispered through her mind, protect him, not because he is the heir, but because he is light. Emma stepped forward. Elias's silver eyes glowed, and she felt something new moving through her, a tether of energy linking her heartbeat to his. Ravian froze. No, that bond should not exist yet. Alaric stood, eyes widening in awe. Emma, you activated the tether. Light burst from Elias, flowing through her arms, her chest, her skin. Ravian shielded his face, stumbling back, snarling in fury. Emma's voice, steady, strong, echoed through the chamber. You will not touch him. The light surged, slamming into Ravian like a wave. He was thrown through the doorway, crashing against the far wall of the corridor. He crumpled, dazed, glaring up at her as if seeing her for the first time. A human tether, he hissed, just like she foretold. Emma stepped closer to Alaric. He won't come back. Alaric looked at her, truly looked, and for the first time his expression held something soft. No, he said quietly. He won't. Not while you stand with us. Elias whimpered softly, exhausted from the burst of power. Emma held him close, rocking him gently, her voice trembling with relief. Alaric approached slowly. Emma, you saved him. You saved us both. Emma swallowed. I don't know what I am now. Alaric's eyes softened. You are what the queen always believed you would become. Ravian's footsteps retreated down the corridor, disappearing into the darkness. And Emma, holding Elias against her heart, realized that her life had never been ordinary. It had been waiting. What did you think of the story? Subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who will also be moved today.